An anonymous witness known as Miss K told the Zondo inquiry that the Chief Directorate of Special Operations at the State Security Agency was shut in 2016. However, dubious projects continued. She testified that this included the guarding of the presidential plane. Ms. K says the former State Security Agency Director General Arthur Fraser was the point of contact for these agents. She's been dealing with investigations undertaken by Project Veza, which was tasked with a cleanup campaign at the agency.
Under some other unit, or did they seize other than the guarding of the aeroplane, of the presidential aircraft?
When we are told by some of the implicated individuals and members of CDSO that when they were closed down, they were instructed to hand over all of their documents to Mr. Arthur Fraser's office.
Yes.
I think that these are the documents that we've managed to find now. However, the projects continued running because there was still money expended in the 2017-2018 under the CDSO budget.
But now, when these activities continued after the CDSO had been closed, under what unit were they being continued? Do you know?
It was under the DG's office. That's the impression I got. They were now reporting to the DG's office.
Ms. K added that just under R1 billion of the State Security Agency's budget was spent on the Chief Directorate of Special Operations between 2012 and 2018.
Chair, when we look at the official financial records of the SSA in terms of budget and expenditure, when we looked at the period that is covered there, and CDSO on its own as a chief directorate spent just below R1 billion. It was 900 and something. I can't even pronounce that number because
there are too many.
I'd rather say just under R1 billion.
Yes. That is per year or over the period? I guess over the period. Yes.
But this is one. It has to be seen in the context of it's a chief directorate. It's not a higher. It's a chief director. I don't know how to explain it. It's not even the counterintelligence in its entirety. It's just one element under there.
Yes.
You know, just one unit spending that amount of money on, and the cost driver was the covert projects, the contact payments and all of that. And without proper accounting, because if there are resources that are meant for that, then it can't be anything irregular.
While the state capture inquiry has been front and center this week, we look at some of the testimonies coming out of there. Our reporter Tumalo Mutlaudi has been watching the developments there. Tumalo, today an important day because as the inquiry is continuing to hear on the one hand just how far the presidency in the form of Jacob Zuma had gone in controlling the apparatus of the State Security Agency, the Constitutional Court, not far from there, handed down its ruling in terms of whether or not the former president is compelled to appear and answer questions before the commission.
Absolutely, Kathy. And in terms of the Constitutional Court's finding or ruling, it has stated categorically that former President Jacob Zuma will have to adhere to the Commission of Inquiry when called upon to give testimony. Now, what is interesting about the Constitutional Court's ruling is also the fact that it has given leeway for former President Jacob Zuma to basically, state his right or call upon his right not to answer certain questions. However, when he is called upon and dates are set, he will have to, avail himself before the Commission of Inquiry to help it in its investigations of the allegations into state capture.
I thought it was quite an important explainer that the Constitutional Court had today in terms of the privileges that witnesses enjoy and the circumstances under which they can say that they don't want to answer question. It certainly left me with the impression that what has been done up till now is perhaps not the best way to do it, because they said, yes, you can invoke your privilege not to incriminate yourself, but you have to give the circumstances for why it will incriminate you. You can't just say, you know, in the case of Dudumieni,
yes,
are you a board member? Were you a board member between X and Y years? I can't answer that question because I don't want to incriminate myself.
Yes, this is very important, because what this then just allows the Commission of Inquiry to do, and the evidence leaders, when someone invokes that privilege, they can say to them, but why are you saying so? So someone has to give reasons that are compelling and reasons that are sufficient within law to state, for X, Y, and Z, this is why I don't say that. And this has to be tested and this has to be debated. So it certainly closes the gap for someone to just willy-nilly decide, well, I don't think I want to answer that question because I fear I might incriminate myself, which is not good enough. And I think that was a way for the Constitutional Court to try and help the Commission of Inquiry, because you have a situation, as you just rightly pointed, where Dudumuyeni, former SAA chairperson, was there for a couple of days. And in those couple of days, I think when you total it up, she only gave testimony for what would amount to less than a few hours in terms of directly answering question. The rest of the time, it was just, you could just basically have asked her to, make that statement and put it on repeat over and over again. So this effectively, what the Constitutional Court's judgment means is that, witnesses cannot come to the Commission of Inquiry, even if they come so begrudgingly, to waste the Commission of Inquiry's time.
Dumale, when we heard that evidence from Mrs. K, for me it struck me the fact that when it was put to her by the evidence leader, Advocate Pretorius, that the operations that were being undertaken by some of these units were against the constitution of this country, that some of them were actually criminal. Yes. She did not say no. In fact, she said yes. How did it happen that people who are implicated in stealing 17 million from the State Security Agency are still tasked with missions of the State Security Agency?
This speaks to a clear lack of oversight, Kathy. It certainly means that the State Security Agency at that point in time was running as a parallel intelligence unit that was not necessarily under anyone's authority. You have testimony from Ms. K where she corroborated earlier evidence whereby you have agents who were then effectively employing other agents without a mandate and doling out willy-nilly state resources, including firearms, to unvetted individuals who would then go on and then recruit others. So there was no oversight, there was no accountability, because reports weren't necessarily being given back and the amounts in question weren't necessarily being tallied up. We heard, of course, that according to the State Security Agency's operations, agents had to write reports and had to write analysis and put together, costings about how their operations were going to be funded in terms of how monies were going to be used and for what purpose. This wasn't done under this particular period in question. And that just, it sends shivers down one's spine to think what was actually happening.
And just the fact that there was so much money floating around, doing the rounds, which was enabling all of these agents to do what they were doing, half of which we might probably never know. Arthur Fraser is going to have a lot to answer for.
He's going to have a lot to answer for, and he's going to definitely have a tough time of it in terms of, trying to shift the blame. What was happening under his watch, and why were these operations allowed to carry on? We heard also evidence of, rogue agents, if I can call them that, buying properties. How does that get explained? What were these properties used for? What were these vehicles used for? What were these firearms used for? And how can you then know the extent of where that rot runs to when you don't even have reports that were given accountability to?
Tumaole, this is no doubt the end of it, and Tumaole constantly is keeping an eye on the State Capture Commission of Inquiry.